This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, reopening and jobs data interconnects at opportunity, the FCC's new maps start arriving, security and broadband in the infrastructure bill, Google's remote pay disparity and the SMB opportunity, artificial intelligence impact on call centers and decision making, and the McFlurry machine is broken and why IT providers care. All this and more. Hit that like and subscribe buttons, and let's get to this week's stories. Amazon has joined other companies in delaying their reopening plans, pushing the date back until January 3rd. The company has not added a vaccine mandate to their plans, although masks are required for unvaccinated employees. Uber has announced that corporate employees in their U.S. offices will be required to be vaccinated, but drivers and passengers are not. Let's reference Business Insider, which highlights this new landscape. Startup Workato reopened on June 15th, and no one showed up. Zoom is delaying office openings because only 1% of workers are willing to show up, and Google has approved 85% of nearly 10,000 requests for remote work or relocation. U.S. unemployment is at a new pandemic-era low of 5.4%, with an addition of almost 1 million new jobs in July. Wages have risen 4% from this time last year. That from the U.S. government, while LinkedIn is reporting an average of 49 days from submission of an application to hiring for engineering jobs. It's 46 days for business development. CompTIA noted that the unemployment rate for tech occupations dropped to 1.5% in July, according to that same U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics data. That's the lowest level since August 2019 and is close to the historic low of 1.3%. In that context, I'm linking to Protocol, which dives into the 4-day work week and the companies that are embracing it. Now, why do we care? I've got two themes. First, tactically, work isn't just sliding back to the way it was, nor is the pandemic over. It bears repeating. Get vaccinated, but also work a plan and help customers with theirs. The second is the changing employment situation. I've long since thought this rush to return to the office was artificial and exposes a legacy thinking that isn't based on either current market conditions nor on actual data. It smells more like lazy management. That leaves an opening for creative thinkers, as well as an opportunity to deliver services around helping customers examine their options. The reason I keep focusing here is that the consulting opportunities are just so ripe, so a constant feed of data is something to mine. The FCC has released new maps which show mobile service across the U.S. Sourced from data from the carriers, this map is the work of the FCC's Broadband Data Task Force. This is considered the first step in the FCC's efforts to provide information to consumers, per the release, which cites the Broadband Data Collection Project as a larger effort. This map does not focus on home internet availability. Why do we care? First step. This project is now showing results, and while it's early days, anyone tracking on better broadband and the theme of unlocking that potential cares about the FCC having good data. They're starting to deliver on that promise. Let's talk about legacy applications. Two surveys we care about today. In a report from the UK, half the money being spent in IT goes to supporting legacy IT systems. Quote, a recent analysis by Government Security indicates that almost 50% of government IT spend, £2.3 billion out of a total central government spend of $4.7 billion in 2019, is dedicated to keeping the lights on, activity on outdated legacy systems, with an estimated £13 to £22 billion risk over the coming 5 years, the report notes. And at nearly 2/3 of large enterprises, there are mainframe-based apps dating back 10 to 20 years, according to Advanced's Mainframe Modernization Business Barometer report. Over a quarter of businesses feature applications that are between 20 or 30 years old. Some even harken back to the 1960s. 78% of enterprises have started at least one modernization program as a direct result of COVID-19. Why do we care? first glance, for many focused on SMB, this would seem irrelevant. Government and large enterprise data? Ignore that. It's the pattern. Old systems cost a lot of money to maintain. I'm thinking a lot about the SMB of the current and the future, one that isn't burdened by these legacy systems. My reasoning is this. That thinking understands who IT providers would be serving and also what current customers need to compete against. These would be unburdened by legacy and even more competitive reason to invest. Now layer on the typical MSP. If you're making money on maintaining old stuff, are you no longer in alignment with your customer if you do better by not keeping them current? That's warning area. From Black Hat last week, researchers are warning of an increase in double extortion attacks against companies. Also at the event, Acronis released their new cyber threats report for mid-year 2021, warning that small and mid-sized businesses, SMBs, are at particular risk based on the attack trends seen during the first 6 months of the year. The report cites a 33% jump in ransomware payments, which smaller companies would struggle to absorb. Palo Alto Networks Unit 42, which is the threat intelligence team, released a report to understand why ransom prices have risen. One trigger, the quadruple extortion tactic. Encrypt the data, vow to release the data, launch denial of service attacks, and harass customers, partners, employees, and the news media to embarrass the victim. The strategy is to put as much pressure as possible on the victim. Acronis' data supports this idea, a 70% increase in the number of victims whose data was publicly released. The Biden administration has explained why they decided not to ban ransomware payments. They were concerned about driving the activity further underground. The, quote, state of resilience is inadequate, end quote. Salt Security's State of API Security Q3 2021 cites only 11% of people surveyed are greatly concerned about the security risks of shadow or unknown APIs. In contrast, 42% are greatly worried about zombie APIs, which were assumed to be turned off but can be targeted for an account takeover. Compared to when the study was first conducted 6 months ago, the percentage of respondents that are at least somewhat confident their API inventory is complete increased from 53% to 62%. Google announced an unattended project reminder feature now in public preview, designed to address security by identifying old cloud computing projects that are not being used. Microsoft announced their Azure Sentinel Cloud SIEM can now detect potential ransomware activity using the Fusion machine learning model. A Conti ransomware gang playbook has leased. A disgruntled affiliate released the group's training materials. The training materials include manuals on deployment of the ransomware, hacking tools, and, as reported by Channel EDE, mentions of RMM provider Atera. Quoting that article, based on the leak playbook, ethical hacker Vitaly Kremens tweeted a warning for network administrators looking for Conti activity to, quote, scan for unauthorized Atera agent installations and any desk persistence, Threat Post reports. Atera commented to Channel EDE that the product has not been compromised. And in security features you can use, Windows 10 admins can now selectively block USB devices in a layered group policy. Why do we care? There are a couple of approaches here I wanted to highlight. First is the understanding of quadruple extortion. It's the answer to, I don't have anything of value to steal. Yes you do. Second, it's the quote about the state of resilience. That's a failure of the technology industry. Finally, it's the actions required. The API data shows the industry is just continuing its existing practices of not even watching the basics. That tells IT providers where they can focus. Get the basics right, which are not necessarily easy, but they go a long way. And we still have a long way to go. Business travel. Will it come back? Is it coming back? Axios showcased data projecting corporate travel to remain at just 30% of 2019 levels by the end of 2021 in a Deloitte survey of travel managers. Half of the surveyed companies say they're adjusting their travel strategies to be more sustainable. 76% say they're turning more internal meetings that would require flying into online ones. 58% say they'll do fewer business trips overall, and 55% say they'll specifically look at cutting back on corporate international travel. Two-thirds of respondents say they'll reduce the frequency of business trips to save money. Tech Republic, meanwhile, cited two surveys. Kalunga explained that 68% of business travelers and travel managers are, quote, pushing for a return to business travel, and cited GBTA data, which shows that 40% of companies had already resumed non-essential domestic business travel. It may be too early to tell. John Grant, chief analyst at OAG, said the company has seen, quote, no evidence of any recovery in the business market, adding that this uptick would be unexpected since it's already peak vacation season. Now, why do we care? Business travel can be used as a barometer for economic activity and a measure of the change in the underlying patterns. For me, it's becoming more of the second and less of the first. My working theory continues to be that the pandemic taught those in finance that business can be done more cheaply with similar results electronically. Add to that the acceleration of e-commerce, and it's easy to see the trend. Remember, this is an and, not an or. Businesses are accelerating the investment in electronic and de-emphasizing but not eliminating the physical. This should be a lens for your own processes and what to take to your customers. Are you as easy to do business with online as you are in person? Survey data from Arlington Research says that nearly 3/4, 72%, of organizations required repatriation of applications for performance and/or costs. And for 41% of respondents, businesses migrated applications to the public cloud that should have stayed on premise. Analysts in the CIO Dive article cite four main reasons: cost savings projected by cloud providers that went unrealized, applications that required modernization to benefit from cloud-native capabilities, which can be expensive and time-consuming, the internal IT team lacking readiness to support workloads in the cloud, and applications in the cloud increasing data ingress cost and latency issues. So, in that context, let's look at Gartner's data on trends in public cloud. The analyst predicts public cloud will account for more than 45% of all enterprise IT spending by 2026. It's 17% this year. There are four trends driving this: the cloud ubiquityness, regional cloud ecosystems, sustainability, and cloud infrastructure and platform services automated infrastructure. Some of this is linked to the pandemic, but the analyst notes specifically that cloud ubiquity was true pre-pandemic. A key point: the boundaries between those systems will disappear. Thus, our last data of the day is MuleSoft's 2021 IT and Business Barometer Report. Quoting ZDNet, IT and business alignment has improved for the majority of organizations, 87%, over the past 12 months. 43% say it has improved significantly. According to the report, COVID-19 has sparked a new focus on business agility. More than 3/4, 78% of organizations say improving business agility is extremely important to remain competitive in the future. That builds benefits: improved collaboration, operational efficiency, and better customer experience. And the challenges are integration issues, which about a third of organizations say have increased significantly, as well as security, governance, and a lack of business process skills. So why do we care? It might be tempting to read too much into the issues with cloud migrations highlighted by the research for those who still might be cloud skeptics. Resist. Those issues highlighted are the problems IT providers should focus on solving for customers, because Gartner's prediction doesn't say a move away from public clouds, and MuleSoft's gives direction on where to go. Internal teams often do lack the readiness to manage the cloud. A lift and shift approach rarely works. And finally, integration, that huge challenge. And everything here is a list of opportunities. Offerings here are the clear needs. Everything screams business results, too. Here are the buyer's reasons to focus on in your solutions. Address these. Reuters is reporting that after examining Google's pay calculator, employees based in the same office before the pandemic could see different changes in pay if they switch to working from home permanently, with longer commuters hit harder. The article highlights that Facebook and Twitter had similar cuts, and smaller companies like Reddit and Zillow have shifted to location-agnostic pay models, citing advantages on hiring, retention, and diversity. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise has established a vaccine mandate for all employees, contractors, and visitors. Dell has delayed reopening their office openings due to the number of COVID-19 cases cited across its office locations. The company has not announced a position on vaccine mandates. Why do we care? Besides updating on the landscape, I want to highlight that space where in a highly competitive hiring market, smaller companies can thrive. Big tech's decisions to try and squeeze on pay because they can, as they clearly don't have to, just feels unwise in the current landscape. That's the takeaway. There's something else to offer to stay competitive. Are you struggling with your internal processes? Babysitting employees? Constantly putting out fires? Eureka Process is here to help. With strategy consulting to help with your strategy, process help for building and optimizing tools, and V-screening to help with your talent hiring, MSPs trust Eureka Process. And the best part? Resources right on YouTube. Visit youtube.com/Eureka Process and subscribe and learn, because growth is intentional. Ready for JEDI 2.0? Microsoft and Amazon are fighting again over a government deal. This time, codenamed Wild and Stormy. It's another $10 billion cloud contract, this time around processing and analytics for the National Security Agency. NextGov is highlighting analysis by Bloomberg Government, which notes that Amazon is the cloud provider to beat and Microsoft is still playing catch-up. Now, why do we care? When you get to a certain size, there in order to maintain growth, a company has to be entering into bigger and bigger markets. And for Amazon and Microsoft, federal government work is one of those big industries. Healthcare is another example. So we care to watch which industries the public cloud providers are expanding into. The drama doesn't hurt for sure, but there's actual reasons to watch this space. The U.S. Senate approved a bipartisan $1 trillion infrastructure package on Tuesday. In the bill, it not only includes money for broadband investments, but cybersecurity as well. There's money allocated for state and local governments to strengthen their defenses. There's also inclusion of the Cyber Response and Recovery Act, which authorizes the DHS Secretary to declare a significant incident and access a fund to help address it. CISA was given money to invest in sector risk management, and DHS's Science and Technology Directorate was given funding to invest in cybersecurity research. The bill also funds the White House National Cyber Director Office. A congressional commission on looking at America's cyber defenses does cite progress, as nearly 75% of the 82 recommendations made in the March 2020 report have been implemented. The report specifically calls out, our work is not yet done. A study looking at Microsoft 365 has identified that 1 in every 4 companies has suffered an email security breach. 62% are caused by compromised passwords and phishing attacks. 68% of companies expect Microsoft 365 to keep them safe from email threats, yet 50% use third-party solutions. Those organizations that use third-party solutions reported the lowest rate of email security breaches in comparison to organizations only using security packages offered by Microsoft 365. 82% of all respondents who use third-party email solutions reported no breaches. Microsoft has confirmed another Windows Print Spooler zero-day bug. The workaround? Stopping and disabling the Print Spooler service. And that class of print nightmare exploits has been added to ransomware attacks. CrowdStrike has confirmed use of it in the wild. Microsoft has warned again about the Baza call center phishing and malware group, all about getting users to open emails. This warning focuses on fake copyright infringement notices. The universal decryption key for R-Evil's Kaseya attack has been leaked on hacker forums and is now in the wild. This is the universal decryptor for those impacted by the attack. Google updated its Titan security key lineup, bringing NFC to all its keys and removing Bluetooth. And Accenture has revealed it has been breached. The global consulting firm, who's been actively acquiring security companies and is a $45 billion organization, was hit by Lockbit, which prevents users from accessing systems until a payment is made. The attackers are threatening to release the company's data. Why do we care? It's easy to accept that if Accenture can get hit, anyone can. Don't dismiss that they can afford it. The proportional impact is very different. Are we in the moment of the changing of attitudes? Maybe. From the government, yes. From industry, I'm less convinced. I would absolutely love to be wrong here, but planning for the worst still seems safer to me. Also in the infrastructure bill is broadband, allocating $65 billion for connectivity. The final bill did not include provisions for municipal broadband networks to be prioritized and does not preempt state measures that restrict those networks. Also previously discussed was changing the definition of broadband, which also didn't make it. The bill defines broadband as 100 megabits down and 20 up. What did make it is $40 billion to the states, which will then work with localities and ISPs to improve the networks. Providers that accept funds must offer a low-cost tier of service at the required speeds to the markets they serve in that state. The bill also reinstitutes the so-called broadband nutrition label, disclosing speed and reliability information. Now, why do we care? I was a guest on the Podnuts Pro podcast last night, and we talked about broadband. I maintain that every IT provider wants more options and more competition to open up new customers to be served. And this is a welcome step for ensuring the digital divide doesn't leave too many Americans behind, but not enough to change the behaviors of the telecom industry. Better news for society, not enough good news for providers here. Let's talk artificial intelligence. First, quoting CIO Dive. The main benefit of enterprise AI is its ability to improve planning and decision-making, according to 57% of executives in a report released Monday by Cognizant. The survey consulted 1,000 executives representing 11 industry sectors. More than half of respondents said AI was an invaluable tool for interpreting unstructured data, 68%, predicting outcomes, 62%, and gathering real-time intelligence, 57%. But strategies vary according to AI maturity levels, the report found. Just 20% of businesses are AI leaders, a category determined by the importance of AI for business processes and the number of areas where AI is deployed, the report found. Then this from Tech Republic. Chatbots and call center support are table stakes when it comes to implementing artificial intelligence, according to a new report. Cognizant's Center for the Future of Work found that leaders are using the automated analysis for decision support, automated reasoning, text mining, and object and speech recognition. The survey found another differentiator among AI leaders: more sophisticated verification mechanisms. Leaders were significantly more likely to run auto-regression tests, deploy generative adversarial networks, and build explainable AI verification dashboards as compared with implementers and beginners. About 80% of leaders use those techniques compared with less than 40% of companies in the other two groups. Why do we care? Chatbots and call center support being table stakes. So I ask, how many IT services providers have done this? I don't have data in the SMB, but considering the technology is delivered via third-party products for the industry leaders in such things as PSA, I'd infer not much. My guidance is not go build an AI system. It is, however, to be considering if this powerful feature is missing from your toolbox. I'm watching for disruption in the ways, and implied some tools, that IT services are delivered with, and those that bring AI to bear as a feature will fill this gap. There's a gap here, and gaps are spaces for disruption. Let's talk about McFlurries. A judge has awarded a temporary restraining order against Taylor Company, the company that makes the McDonald's ice cream machines. This was granted after Kitch, a company that makes a diagnostic tool for the machines, filed a lawsuit back in May. As fans of the ice cream know, the machines are often broken. Taylor is accused of specifically designing them to fail, and Kitch built a tool to help diagnose problems, which Taylor then tried to replicate in part by using Kitch's own tools, and then telling customers not to use those tools because they were dangerous. Why do we care? This is a right to repair debate hidden in an ice cream treat. An independent tool provider found an opportunity, and the manufacturer wants to control who and how their devices can be fixed. In this case, it appears the device maker may have gone to a pretty far extreme to lock in repairs and diagnostics. It's a great case for why right to repair is important, and this case, like those in farm equipment, have absolute parallels in the IT space. I'm rooting for Kitch here. As we go to the weekend, here's another thought piece for you. Reuters discusses Sweden's rise as a Silicon Valley of Europe, focusing on a government initiative around putting a computer in every home. Combined with an early investment in connectivity, the country now has a rich ecosystem of technology startups, and this despite one of the highest tax rates in the world. It has the third highest startup rate in the world and the highest 3-year survival rate for startups at 74%. Why do we care? This is worth the read for those who consider regulation entirely bad. I'm not advocating Sweden's tax structure. What I'm observing is that proper deployment of programs can make a huge difference. It's easy to slam government. A caricature of incompetence is painted, where nothing that the government does is right or helpful. That's overly simplistic and just not true. An example, antitrust. It unlocks market potential. Look at the explosion in market value in all the antitrust actions. You wouldn't have Google without Microsoft's antitrust woes. There's a healthy debate to be had about how to measure those programs and which should be funded, and that's called politics. And it's why we care about tracking regulation. Enjoy the good weekend thought piece. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.